All right, so this is our Motor Products power bleeder. So basically you hook it up to your hydraulic master cylinder, your brake master cylinder here. And I end up putting this airline fitting in mine so it's easier to take it on and off, so it doesn't leak when you disassemble it and you don't twist your line up, take it off and on. You'll know what I mean if you get one of these kits. So you basically put your brake fluid in here. In this case I use .3, that's what came in this car. You make sure there's no leaks, you get it all tight. You pump this up to 15 pounds, you see here. And you go in and you mash the brake pedal about 5 to 8 times. Make sure you got good pressure on everything. You make sure this isn't leaking down. You check your cap, make sure it's not leaking. Once everything's good to go, you got fluid. Then you come back here, you start at the right rear brake caliper. And what I do is I get like a rubber line, long rubber line, so it doesn't just leak everywhere. And have a drain bucket here. And then we basically take this is a 7/16, and we loosen this up and it starts to flow out. It'll go down the line. And actually we'll run into the bucket here. See, it's coming out now. We'll let that run for a second. Then we're going to tighten this back up. Like that. Okay. And what we're going to do, we're going to do a little bit at a time. So we're going to do this right rear one, then I'm going to go do the left rear one, then the front right, then the front left. I'm going to do that a couple times, just kind of cycle all the old fluid out while we put the new fluid in. And each time you do it, you want to come back around here and make sure your pressure is constantly at 15 pounds. If it ever drops below, just take this handle, loosen it, and you pump it a couple times. Keep your pressure about 15 pounds the whole time. And we'll do that, run it through. Just make sure your tank doesn't go empty. So you can put, they recommend 2 quarts of fluid, depending on how much you're going to use. So I put a quart in mine to see how much, and I'll keep an eye on it. If it gets low, I'll put another quart in it. And you just make sure you don't want to run it low and introduce air into your system, because then you got to bleed all out again. You don't want to introduce air in there and have a spongy pedal. So it's pretty easy to do. This just makes it easy for one person to bleed and clear out the lines of old fluid. But when I'm done with this, we'll have a fresh set of brake fluid in the car. It'll be ready to go. Something real quick here. I've already bled the brakes. And now what I'm doing is checking out basically the rotors, the brakes, everything. So the brake pads actually look good on this car. But what I wanted to do now is there's these pins, or you can call them bolts, pins, whatever you want to do. But they go through and they hold the caliper to the car, and the brake pads are in here. Well, these pins are designed for the caliper to slide back and forth. Well, of course, over the years they get dry and they need to have lube on them, so they actually make this stuff called disc brake caliper lube. And what it does is you put this stuff on the pins here, and it allows the brake pads and the caliper itself to slide back and forth and engage and disengage the brake smoothly. So if it doesn't have any lube, it can actually drag a little bit or hang or lock the brakes up. So because this car is set up, they were really dry. So what I did was I've already taken this pin out and lubed it, and I'm putting it back. I've already put it back in and tightened it. Now I'm getting to take this one off. So I'll show you what it looks like. You just loosen this up. And it doesn't take much force, but what it does is it goes through the 2 brake pads, through the knuckle here, into the caliper, and just holds it on. Basically just take this out like so. When you pull it out, it looks like this. And then what I do is I take a rag and I wipe it off, and then I take this and I brush it on the end here, and I brush it up here on the smooth part right in here. And that's where it's going to slide back and forth. And again, it just helps the caliper and the pads to slide smoothly, so you have smooth engagement of your brakes. Because this car is a 4-wheel disc brake car from the factory, I'm going to do this front and rear. And let me check back here. Let's see, this one, yep, it has the pins. They're just on the back side. So you loosen these bolts here, or pins, whatever you want to call them, and you actually lube it in there so the caliper and everything can slide back and forth. It's just a little trick. It'll help your brakes feel smooth. They won't be as grabby. And on these old Fox bodies, actually keep your caliper from what it may feel like a brake is locking up on it. So again, you can get this stuff. This is actually Permatex, part number 24110, and it's just caliper lube. So, and it goes on the pins for the caliper to slide back and forth. Little trick. All right, so wouldn't you know it, I got the brakes bled, I got all the caliper pins pulled and greased, and I got to the very last one, which is right here on the driver's side back. And again, there's 2 pins that hold each one on. And I got the top one out, and I greased it, and I got to the bottom one, which is the very last one, and it would not come out. So here's what they look like. You pop it out, you grease it, and you put it back in. I mean, it can't be any simpler to do. Well, this one wouldn't come out. So I tried to turn it with a wrench, wouldn't come out, so I sprayed PB Blaster all down in here and let it soak. I took the bracket, put it here in my vise, and I tried to take a socket and turn this thing in and out, back and forth, and all I accomplished was basically turning it enough to start bending this, which is going to ring it off. So this thing is garbage. Now, because I was aggravated as hell, like, you know, if you look it up, this is very common for a Fox body, especially, well, pretty much any car, but if you don't grease the slides on these things, they can get water in them and they can rust. And what happens is they call freeze up, where it can't move. And that's exactly what happened to that bracket. So the slide is frozen and it can't move. And what that means is when you hit the brakes, this caliper can't move. It can't move in or out on that side. So it could drag the brakes, it could make the brakes not functional. Because the front one did work, it could make the brake try to apply a little bit, so it'd be kind of a 50% of it trying to apply. But either way, it is not right. So the nice thing is National Parts Depot actually has their website up, and I was able to find the bracket, and they specialize in Fox body stuff, which is great. They actually have the bracket. It's only 20 bucks for the bracket, but it doesn't come with the hardware, and I didn't find the hardware on the site on them. So there's nothing wrong with the brakes other than they just need to be driven a little bit and cleaned up. But yeah, there you go. This is why I do this kind of maintenance, because, you know, that's something you just don't know. When he parked it, it was fine, but part of it sitting up like this, the moisture got in there and rusted that slide, and now it's frozen and you can't get it loose. We're gonna check the radiator, shall we? Ooh, yummy. Yeah, about what I was expecting. Yikes. Okay, so I'm already ordering a radiator hose kit, which will be here later this week. So because of the way that looks, I'm going to drop the radiator out of the car. I'm gonna drain the fluid. I'm gonna put hose on anyway. But the best way to clean this thing, I'm actually gonna pull the radiator all the way out of the car and flush it best I can in and out. And then when the hoses get here, I'm actually gonna take the hoses back here off, and I'm gonna flush them. I'm gonna do a reverse flush to try to clean the heater core. So everything that's in there now, I'm gonna try to reverse flush it out. So I'll put a hose on this end and drain it out on the ground, flush all the crap out of it, and flow water back and forth till it's clear both ways. That way the heater core is completely clean. And then I'll try to hook something when I have everything disconnected from the engine. And a little bit of delay. I had to order some parts, wait for it to come in today. One of them is this sweet Continental blue hose kit. So this is what it fits, 86 and 93, part number 5001, heavy duty hose kit with the clamps for it. So that's what's gonna go on it. While I had it apart, I went ahead and pulled the radiator out and drained it. And as you would expect, it was pretty nasty. So I went in and I flushed it with this cleaner that I have. And the last time I did the video for you, I had a problem with the rear brake caliper bracket, and it froze up with the slider. So I had to order a new bracket. It came in today. I put the bracket on it. It did not come with hardware, so I went down to O'Reilly's. I got some hardware to fit it. I was able to use the factory bolts into the new sliders I got from O'Reilly's, and I was able to use one of the original rubber boots. I had to get an aftermarket rubber boot down here, but what I found was the rubber boot was torn, the factory one, so I couldn't reuse it, and that may have contributed to water getting in there and seizing up the slider, which is what caused the failure in the first place. But anyway, it doesn't come painted, so I did a quick paint on it, not the caliper, just the bracket, and that is flat black. So once he drives it a little bit, it'll blend in just like the other stuff on here. As you've noticed since you last saw it, I did clean up the rotors, knock the rust off of them. The pads were in excellent shape, so they are fine to reuse. Here's the plug I took out of it, and by comparison, this is what they should look like. So I'd say it's a little gassed up, huh? So same plug, 3922 auto light, or 3924. Yeah, sorry, 3924 and a 3924. So I'm going to check the gap on it, set the gap, put some anti-seize on it, and put it in here. And once I get that done, I'm going to cycle it, make sure there's no fuel leaks. Once I get the plugs in it, no fuel leaks, then I'll put the gasket on, set the intake manifold on it, and we should be ready to clean the air filter and then fire this thing up. She's a little dirty. So we're gonna wash and clean this and recharge it. At the same time, I'm gonna clean that mass air meter out. But yeah, definitely dirty. It's like trying to run with a mask on. You know how that is, because we've been in lockdown for 2 years now for that coof. So, getting close, gonna get this cleaned up. Now that we got the fuel injectors cleaned up, a new fuel system on here with the pump and the lines, now we'll get this filter cleaned up. You ever wondered how to wash your Can-Am filter? Just get a bucket with some soapy solution in it, drop it in like this, plunge and pick up, plunge and pick up. Basically you're forcing it back out. It's already looking better. Already can start seeing more daylight through it. Anyway, we'll do that for a few more minutes. Get it all good and cleaned out, break up all the old oil in it and get all the dirt out of it. Then we'll do a clean rinse through it. Then we'll dry it out. And I might do a slight oil charge. Sometimes too much oil is a bad thing, get on your mass air sensor. So a lot of times I may not even do oil, but we'll see what I feel like. All right, so I did some polishing on this Cobra intake. It was just kind of oxidized where it had been sitting up. But I did some quick hand polishing on it first to remove a lot of the debris and just the big stuff. And then I used my machine polish and went down on with some different compounds, 2400 and then a 3500 to polish it back out of what you see now. And so I'm gonna put just a top coat on it here in a second. Just hopefully keep it shiny for a little longer. But yeah, it looks a lot better than it did when we got it. So it's kind of